You know that feeling when a simple conversation just leaves you utterly drained?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Or maybe when you find yourself like bending over backwards to avoid upsetting someone, even when it goes against what you really want.
Hmm. Or walking on eggshells around certain people.
Exactly. Walking on eggshells. If any of that sounds familiar to you, you're definitely in the right place for this deep dive.
And what's interesting, I think, about these sort of draining dynamics is that they often come from something, well, deeper than just personalities clashing.
Absolutely.
We're going to be exploring this idea that a lot of adult behaviors are actually rooted in um, childlike emotional immaturity.
Okay.
Today, we're really diving into the let them theory based on some really fascinating material that unpacks this whole thing.
Okay, so this isn't about trying to diagnose anyone from our armchairs, right?
No, no, not at all.
Think of this more like a shortcut, a way to understand why some interactions feel so heavy.
Yeah, heavy is a good word for it.
And more importantly, this deep dive offers maybe a fresh way to look at these situations and, crucially, a more empowering way for you to respond. It could save you a huge amount of emotional energy.
That's the goal.
We want to get you some knowledge, actionable stuff quickly that can genuinely shift how you experience your day-to-day interactions and hopefully boost your own well-being.
Exactly. Our mission here really is to get a clearer understanding of how other people's emotional reactions impact your life,
Hmm.
and to introduce a really practical framework, this let them theory, for navigating those reactions in a way that prioritizes your own mental and emotional space.
Okay, let's jump in then. The material we've been looking at highlights something pretty striking. It's this idea of grown-ups essentially throwing tantrums.
Right. Now, it might not look like a toddler melting down in the supermarket aisle, obviously.
No, hopefully not.
But the underlying idea is that adults feel things just as intensely as kids, sometimes even more so, but often lack the more developed skills to manage those feelings constructively or express them well.
And it's so important to see how this actually plays out in, everyday adult life.
Absolutely. Think about those subtle or maybe not so subtle guilt trips,
Ugh. Yes.
or that anxiety you feel about possibly disappointing someone, that constant mental calculation about how your partner or your boss might react to something you say or do.
Constantly second guessing.
Exactly. These are all ways we can get really tangled up in trying to manage other people's emotional states.
Right.
And what's fascinating, according to the source, is that this often stems from their lack of internal emotional regulation, not yours.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because what the material really emphasizes is that when you consistently take on the job of managing other people's emotions,
Yeah.
you inevitably end up sidelining your own needs. It's like you're constantly pouring from your own cup to fill theirs, right?
Yeah, no, and eventually.
And your cup just runs dry. You lose a piece of yourself, maybe.
But this brings us right to the core of this let them theory. It's fundamentally about creating space, psychological space, emotional space. For others. For others, yes. To feel whatever they're feeling, disappointment, anger, sadness, frustration, without you feeling like you have to jump in and fix it for them immediately.
Okay, that's the let them part.
That's the let them part. And just as vital is the let me part.
Let me.
Let me, which is about firmly prioritizing your own well-being, making choices that are right for you, even if maybe they won't make everyone happy.
Ah, okay.
It's about taking back control, really, over your own life and your own reactions.
The material we're digging into offers this really vivid analogy, picturing the fourth grade version of someone who's acting, well, emotionally immature.
Right. So if a friend is giving you the silent treatment, the idea is to try and picture their 8-year-old self sulking in their bedroom.
Huh. Okay, what's the thinking behind that?
Well, the source suggests it's because many adults haven't fully developed that emotional literacy, or the communication skills to just say directly and helpfully what they need or feel. Instead, you get these familiar adult behaviors, right? A parent pouting instead of saying, I feel overlooked when. A partner using the silent treatment. A colleague sending those really passive-aggressive emails. These often reflect an underdeveloped way of handling emotions.
Gotcha. And The source draws these brilliant parallels, doesn't it, between these adult actions and the more obvious kid versions.
Exactly. Pouting is like the silent treatment, a kid running away from something difficult. That mirrors an adult avoiding confrontation.
Or shutting down. You see kids do that when they're upset.
Yeah, and adults become stoic, uncommunicative, same kind of thing. And those classic temper tantrums, they can morph into adult emotional outbursts or, those awful late-night rage texts.
Oh, the rage texts. We've all seen those.
And what's really insightful here is how changing your perspective like this can actually unlock a different response in you.
How so?
Well, instead of instantly feeling frustrated or getting drawn into the drama,
Which is easy to do.
so easy, envisioning that 8-year-old inside can actually foster a bit of, well, maybe compassion.
Compassion, really?
Yeah, you start to see their behavior less as a deliberate attack on you and more as, like, proof they just don't have the right emotional tools.
Okay, I can see that. And it really resonates when the material highlights the direct links between how kids and adults behave when big feelings are involved.
Right. Whether it's literally walking away from a situation or just emotionally checking out.
Yeah.
The impulse underneath often feels very similar. It doesn't matter if you're 6 or 60.
Yeah.
Even things like slamming doors or maybe bending the truth a bit to avoid getting in trouble, those often start early.
So the source says the root cause in kids is this underdeveloped ability to self-regulate, to manage their own emotional responses.
Exactly. And it uses that classic example, the kid having a total meltdown in the Lego aisle because they can't have the toy they want.
Oh, I've seen that happen.
We all have. Their little system is just completely overwhelmed by disappointment and wanting something so badly.
Right. And the typical responses we sometimes see, giving in just to stop the noise or yelling back or just ignoring the kid completely, those actually don't help them learn, do they?
No. In fact, the source argues they prevent the child from developing those crucial self-regulation skills. It contrasts this with a healthier approach, calmly acknowledging the feeling, I see you're really upset right now, but still holding the line, we're not buying the Lego today.
So you validate the feeling, but not the behavior.
Exactly. You let the child feel the emotion without being totally overwhelmed or feeling like their feelings don't matter.
And this is critical because,
and this is a really key insight from the material, when kids' emotions are constantly shut down or dismissed or even punished, they just don't learn how to navigate them effectively. And the argument is that this lack of early emotional education is a huge factor in why some adults remain emotionally immature.
Okay. But here is a super important distinction the source makes. And it's crucial for you, the listener, to grab onto this.
Yes. What is it?
While adults absolutely have a responsibility to help kids develop emotionally,
right,
that responsibility stops dead when it comes to other adults. You are not obligated to manage the emotional reactions of other grown-ups.
Absolutely not. That's their work to do, not yours.
So let's make this really concrete. Let's talk about the silent treatment.
Okay, good example. The material really pinpoints this as a prime example of immature adult behavior. It happens when someone's upset or overwhelmed, but doesn't have healthier ways to cope.
So instead of talking,
they just withdraw, shut down communication completely.
And anyone who's been on the receiving end knows how incredibly unsettling that feels. Like, what did I do wrong?
Exactly. Your first instinct is often to figure out your mistake, maybe apologize, just do anything to break that awful silence.
Yeah.
And the source points out, very smartly, I think, that this is often exactly the dynamic the person giving the silent treatment is subconsciously trying to create.
Really? How so?
It's a way to control the situation, maybe get attention, make you take responsibility for their unexpressed feelings, make you fix it on their terms. It's like that kid who sulks, hoping a parent will come and coax them out of it.
Huh. The material even shared that story, didn't it? About a high school friend who did that all the time.
Yeah, the silent treatment friend. 1 minute, fine. Next minute, total radio silence. Left the author feeling confused, often apologizing for, well, who knows what.
Right. And the key takeaway there is?
The key takeaway is that the silent treatment, and actually so many other emotionally avoidant or reactive behaviors in adults, they're rarely really about you and what you did. They're much more often a reflection of the other person's internal struggle, their own discomfort, and their underdeveloped ability to handle and communicate their feelings effectively.
Which brings us straight back to the power of actually using these let them and let me ideas in your own life.
Yes. And the source could not be clearer on this. It is never your job to manage another adult's emotional world. Full stop.
Full stop.
So when you bump up against someone using the silent treatment, or maybe someone who constantly plays the victim, or someone who just erupts,
Yeah.
the let them principle is your guide. Remember that idea of picturing the 8-year-old inside? The material suggests that can be a really powerful tool.
How does that help in the moment?
It can shift your own internal reaction. Instead of feeling anxious or resentful or angry,
Which are all natural reactions.
totally natural, but picturing that child might help you access a sense of maybe pity or compassion for their lack of emotional skills.
It's a way to remind yourself, isn't it, that their emotional mess isn't your mess to clean up.
Exactly. Their reactions aren't about your worth. These are likely long-standing patterns for them.
And that's where the crucial let me part kicks in.
Yes, let me.
Ah.
You have the power, the agency, to be the emotionally mature adult in that interaction.
You get to choose.
You get to consciously choose if you even want to engage and how. You can firmly remind yourself, this isn't my responsibility.
And sometimes you might need to just remove yourself.
Absolutely. You always retain the right to step away from situations that feel toxic or just too draining. Disengage from that argument, walk away from the guilt trip, maybe even rethink the whole relationship if needed.
The source really emphasizes shifting your focus inward, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to change them, which, let's face it, rarely works.
Rarely, if ever.
And instead, work on setting clearer boundaries for yourself, demanding a higher standard for your own interactions.
It's about breaking your side of the cycle. Stop being the one who constantly manages their immaturity.
Yeah. And there's a really important warning in there, too, about how these relationships can slide into a really unhealthy parent-child dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Where you're always the grown-up, they're always the child. It's incredibly disempowering for you.
And it's vital to see these behaviors not just as little quirks, oh, that's just how they are.
Right. They're often deeply ingrained patterns, and they're likely to stick around unless that person decides to do their own internal work.
Okay, now, the material takes this really important and maybe slightly uncomfortable turn. It prompts some pretty crucial self-reflection by asking, okay, but what if you're the one doing this stuff?
Turning the lens inward. That takes bravery.
It really does. To honestly look at whether maybe we're the ones who get overwhelmed easily, or resort to sulking, or the silent treatment, or fire off those rage texts.
Or play the victim, or snap at people. Yeah, it's tough to see that in ourselves.
But the source offers some reassurance here, which I think is important. If you recognize some of these tendencies in yourself, you're definitely not alone.
No, absolutely not. The author even shares some of their own struggles with recognizing and working on their own emotional immaturity.
It's a really helpful reminder, I think, that even when you understand the theory, like this let them theory, actually putting it into practice, especially with your own feelings, well, that's an ongoing journey, isn't it? It's learning and growing. It's not about suddenly becoming perfectly emotionally regulated overnight.
No, perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. And the benefits of working on your own emotional regulation, as the source points out, are huge. They go way beyond just relationships.
Like what?
Improvements in things like your finances, believe it or not, your thinking clarity, your overall sense of maturity, and kind of self-mastery.
Okay, so how do you actually apply let them to your own emotions then? What's the practical step?
The material lays it out really clearly. When those strong feelings bubble up, anger, frustration, hurt, disappointment, whatever it is, the first step is simply let them. Allow the full range of those feelings to just surface inside you. Don't immediately try to push them down or pretend they're not there or judge yourself for having them.
Just let them be.
Let them be. And then comes the really crucial bit. Let me not react.
Oh, that's the hard part.
That is where the real work happens. Resist that immediate impulse to distract yourself or cope in the usual ways.
Like grabbing your phone.
Grabbing your phone, scrolling social media, turning on the TV, reaching for comfort food, firing off an impulsive text.
Okay, so instead of reacting.
Instead, try to just observe. Notice the physical feelings in your body. Notice the thoughts that come with the emotion. But try not to get swept away by the story your mind wants to spin around it.
Just watch it.
Just watch it. And the fundamental reason for doing this, for allowing emotions to rise without that immediate reaction, is that, like a wave, they will eventually crest, and then they'll naturally subside, all on their own, if you let them.
Okay, this leads into understanding emotions themselves a bit better, doesn't it? The source touches on the science.
It does. It explains that emotions are basically these brief chemical bursts in the brain. They might only last a few seconds chemically.
Only a few seconds. Really?
Chemically, yes, though they can trigger physical sensations that linger a bit longer.
And there's that amazing statistic.
Oh yeah, the 90-second rule. Research suggests that most emotions, if you don't actively feed them with your thoughts or reactions...
Like replaying the argument in your head.
Exactly. If you don't do that, the actual feeling itself will often dissipate within about 90 seconds.
Wow. A minute and a half.
A minute and a half. So trying to just clamp down and stop emotions from even arising, it's kind of futile. And it can actually make them stronger and last longer.
So the better strategy is?
Allow them to surface, acknowledge them, and then consciously choose not to react in those old, unhelpful ways.
Right. And the source circles back here to remind us again. You just cannot control someone else's emotional reaction.
No matter how hard you try, that's their internal world.
The material also mentions how contagious emotions can be, right? How easily someone else's bad mood can trigger you.
Oh, absolutely. Someone snaps at you and bam, you feel defensive or angry yourself. It's a very real thing.
And it points out things that can make us more reactive too.
Yeah, the usual suspects. Being hungry, tired, stressed.
HLT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Exactly. Using substances, feeling lonely, already being angry or hurt about something else, all these things can lower our threshold for reacting.
But the big takeaway message here, the source, really emphasizes this.
What is it?
While you can't control what happens to you or your first automatic emotional flash, you absolutely can work on controlling your thoughts, your words, and your actions in response to that feeling.
And that is where your real personal power lies, in that space between the trigger and your response.
So as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
it's really about seeing the huge potential here. Learning to let other adults handle their own emotional stuff.
Giving them that space.
And just as importantly, allowing your own emotions to rise and fall more naturally, even when it feels really uncomfortable.
Which it often will.
Right. Making choices that are genuinely about your own well-being, even if they're difficult choices. That's ultimately a really powerful act of self-care and maturity.
It really is. It's transformative, potentially.
So just to quickly summarize them, the core idea we've explored is that a lot of tricky adult interactions stem from emotional immaturity, patterns that often look like kid behavior.
Right. And this let them theory gives us a powerful way to think about it, both for dealing with others, giving them space.
And for managing our own internal world, the let me part, letting our own feelings rise and fall.
Exactly. Which leads us to a really important question for you to think about after this.
Okay.
Now that you have this framework, maybe ask yourself, what's one specific relationship or maybe a recurring situation in your life where really trying this let them approach could make a difference?
Focusing on their process, not feeling like you have to fix it.
Precisely. How could that shift things for you? And then, maybe on a more personal level, what's one emotion you tend to push down or run away from? Could you maybe experiment with just allowing that feeling to rise, feel it, and let it pass without jumping into your usual reaction?
Those are really valuable questions for reflection, because ultimately getting a better handle on these emotional dynamics,
Well, it's a huge step, isn't it?
it is towards having more authentic interactions, feeling less drained, and just understanding yourself and maybe the people around you a whole lot better.